But moving 420 meters a year, how on earth are most of the tree species going to be able to do that? Well, one of the things we can do, we can help them to move by being smart about where we carry out our restoration. Now, restoration is expensive. You can't do it all over the place, but you can do it in strategic areas that will assist species to disperse. And this is the concept of the forest corridor. Most of the seeds are moved around by animals, and animals need habitat. So if you've got a strip of animal habitat between one bit of forest and another bit of forest, then your monkeys and your birds and your squirrels can run up and down the corridor, and this will at least retain seed dispersal capability. Probably won't achieve 420 meters, but you'll do the best you can with this arrangement. Sometimes we don't even have enough money to plant a complete corridor. So the other idea is that we have stepping stones. Now, according to our research in Chiang Mai, the absolute maximum that we've recorded for seed dispersal was 10 kilometers. So you need the distance between your stepping stones to be less than 10 kilometers, and then you've got a chance that a civet may shift a seed to here, and then a few years later to here, and here, and here, and here. And so you don't have to plant the whole thing. And this is actually happening. There's a massive project called the Western Forest Complex Pilot Corridor Project, which is being funded, or was being funded, I believe, by the Asian Development Bank. So, you know, this is being seriously considered by governments and funding agencies. This is Gam Prachan National Park. This is the biggest national park in Thailand down here. And then up here you've got the Western Forest Complex, which is a conglomeration, I believe, 18 protected areas up here. This has elephants. This has elephants. But currently there is no way that an elephant from down here can go on a date with an elephant up here and maintain genetic diversity in the elephant population. So what this is trying to do is to actually restore the forest along this, it's actually 75 kilometres long, it's quite an ambitious project. And there's various government agencies that are involved. The Thai Army is doing a bit, and the Royal Princesses Foundation is doing a bit, and so on. So it may seem ambitious to be doing these corridors, but they are being considered on quite a large scale. It's easy to get birds to disperse seeds. All you have to do is to give them somewhere to sit down, and they will disperse the seeds for you. This is a project that was done by our colleagues at King Mongkut University, and they came up to our site, and they were ornithologists, and their idea was, if you just put a bamboo pole and some cross pieces in there, the birds, because there's nothing else to sit on in this deforested area, the birds will come, sit on the bamboo poles, and then they'll drop the seeds around here. When you've got some seedlings coming up, you move the bamboo pole. Very, very low technology, very cheap, very easy to do. This is our control site, which is a circle with no bamboo pole in it. And after a while, the red arrows, you can't see exactly, the red arrows are pointing to the tops of seedlings. So you can see there's four really, one really quite tall one here. So it works very well. We've got very few seedlings coming up in the control plot. Simply giving birds a place to sit. They'll go and sit and they'll disperse the seeds. But you know, there's a better way to get birds to come and sit on something and drop seed, because what you could do is plant trees that are specifically providing food for birds. And this is what we do with our framework species technique. This is Prunus ceresoides. This is Nacrea serpong, which I think, Nacrea serpong. You know this one, a very, very popular tree, beautiful pink flowers, and it's a wild cherry. And not only do the birds like to eat the cherries, but because of, you see the knobbly nature of the bark here of this tree, it grips. It provides a good grip for bird nest building. So the birds like to come in. This tree is only about 3 years old, and there's already a bird nesting in it. Now birds and Squirrels and civets, they can swallow seeds up to about 1 centimetre in diameter. And a lot of the seeds in the forest are actually much bigger than that. So there is in fact 12% of the tree flora on Duissenterg, where we do our research. They have seeds which are larger than 15 millimetres in diameter, and they have a higher dry weight than 1.5 grams. For those seeds, you need big animals to move them around. They're not going to go anywhere without animals like this. And of course, these animals don't exist in those forests. You can come up to Chiang Mai, you can ride on an elephant, and the elephant's not living in the forest, it's just living in a park. The only way to move these big seeds around is we've got to bring these animals back. Is it totally unfeasible to bring these animals back? In actual fact, with the elephants, they've already made a start on this. There was a big project a few years back that put elephants back. So, the rhino is a bit more difficult because the rhino is endangered even in Malaysia where it still exists. But we could bring back elephants and put those back into the forest. But if we can't bring back the elephants, then at least we must conserve the seed dispersing animals to maintain the mobility of the trees. And these are some of the most important ones. The bulbuls, amazing group of birds. They can swallow seeds up to 10 millimetres in diameter, and they retain them in their gut for 40 minutes before they come out. It must be quite painful coming out the other end if you swallow something that big. But they can disperse seeds over several kilometres by that mechanism. Fruit bats, nobody really sees them, there's very few people studying them. Now fruit bats, they can grab a fruit, and the fruit is actually, they don't need to swallow the seed. So they can grab a fruit with a big seed in it, fly away, strip off the flesh of the fruit and drop quite a big seed. And our champion seed dispersers are these giant Indian civets, great Indian civets, which seem to be retaining their populations in highly deforested sites to a large degree. And they can eat quite large fruits and seeds. We have to stop this, because if we can't stop people shooting these animals, then we lose this ability, this vital seed dispersal mechanism, which is going to be the saviour of our forests in the future. So he's not just shooting the birds, he's shooting the future of the forest itself. So what we've done is we've had these Save Our Seed Dispersers campaigns, and we've gone into schools, and it starts with the kids. The kids, they love their, the catapult things, and they love to do this. But it doesn't take much. You talk to the kids and you explain about the value of the birds. And I haven't seen a kid with a catapult in our study site now for nearly 10 years. And in our study site, we used to get the bird traps, the little triangular basket on the pole, and the bird comes in and the basket comes down and traps the bird. I haven't seen any of those now for nearly 10 years. But we won't be able to stop people shooting birds forever and in all areas. So what happens if you have a system where there aren't that many seed dispersing animals? Well, one of the solutions is to go out and to disperse seeds yourself. This is called direct seeding. We've done it in the north. We've done it also in Krabi province in the south. This is my PhD student, Dia, doing her work, and it works quite well. Not all species respond well to this treatment, so we need research on this technique. So if you're looking for a master's project or a PhD project, come study direct seeding. It sounds so boring. You take a seed, you put it in the ground, and you record whether it grows or not. It's an easy PhD, and there's all sorts of profound questions you can ask. Do large seeds do better than small seeds, and do seeds of certain families do better than other seeds? But we really need work on this simple technology, because as I will come to in a minute, planting trees is really hard work, and planting seeds is relatively easy. Or we can replace the seed-dispersing animals which have been extirpated with something else. Is it possible that we will be replacing seed-dispersing wildlife with machines in the future because the seed-dispersing wildlife has been shot out? In order to save the forest, it may well become necessary that we rely on machines to disperse seeds. And the machines like this can disperse seeds over long distances, and I don't know, maybe people will be hunting these with guns in the future. I'm going to come back to the topic of automated forest restoration in a moment. Let's deal with diversity first. The second component of adaptability is diversity. Diversity means maximising the species diversity, maximising the number of species that you plant in any particular area, and maximising the genetic diversity within those species to keep open options upon which natural selection can operate in the future. We can represent what's going to happen with a two-dimensional diagram like this. We know it's going to get hotter, so this is the temperature axis, and this is dry and this is wet, and we don't know whether it's going to go up here and get warmer and wetter, or whether it's going to go up here and get warmer and drier, not for individual sites. If you have a species of tree and you can figure out its niche, this is what we call an intolerant species. It's growing happily in the now condition, but if it gets a little bit warmer or wetter, it dies out, and if it gets a little bit warmer and drier, it dies out. We don't really want to be planting those kinds of trees with narrow niches in the future. If we think it's going to get warmer and drier, well, we might consider planting a species like this. So if it gets warmer and drier, this is within the niche of the species, but if it gets warmer and wetter, this species will dry out, it will die out, and other species will survive. This is a species which is tolerant of warmer and wetter conditions, but wouldn't do very well if it gets drier. So if we think it's going to get warmer and wetter, we should be planting this species. And if it gets warmer and drier, then that species is going to dry out. And these are the species which we really need to find out what they are. These are the tolerant species that can pretty much grow in any conditions. The trouble is, for the vast majority of the tropical forestry species that we're working on, nobody knows the niche of these species. We're really talking about the niche of the seedling. Because if the seedling dies, you don't get a tree, right? The tree is most vulnerable at the seedling stage. So what we're really interested in is what is the niche of the seedling, and get it past that vulnerable seedling stage into an adult tree. When we don't know the niche of the species, and we don't know whether it's going to go up to be warmer, wetter, or warmer, drier, what species should be strategy? So we're recommending planting at least 30 different species of trees. Now, if you know that there are some that you will know they're going to do better in a warmer, drier climate, and they're going to do better in a warmer, wetter climate, so you need to mix up your functional types and to mix up the species that you know whether they prefer drier or wetter conditions. Mix them up together. In the future, maybe half of them will die, but there will be some species left that will perpetuate the forest ecosystem, and other species will come in underneath them, and you won't completely lose the forest entirely. So it increases the probability that some species will survive. You have to hedge your bets. Go for diversity. Genetic diversity. Now, within a species, there are different genotypes. Some genotypes will be adapted to warmer, wetter conditions, and others to warmer, drier conditions. So again, you have to look for genotypes that are going to going to adapt, are going to enable the population of that species to survive in one way or another. The current advice, if you pick up any forestry genetics textbook that's older than maybe 5 years old, you will see, collect seeds from local trees nearest to the primary forest, the nearest primary forest at the same elevation as where you are going to plant. So planted trees have the genes which adapt them to local conditions. This has been the standard advice for many years now for people doing forest restoration. I think we need to rethink that, and I'm not alone in this aspect. Mr. Broadhurst and a lot of associates came out with a paper in 2008, and what they are advocating is what they are calling composite provenancing. Composite provenancing to augment gene flow. Composite provenancing means you still keep a fair number of seeds collected from local trees because, you know, the global warming hasn't started yet in those areas, so, you know, they are adapted to local conditions, but again, you hedge your bets. You put in 30% from nearby eco-geographically matched sources, and you even go further south where it's already warmer, and you pick up some seed from a warmer location and you mix them in so that you have a variety of genes in the gene pool. When those trees then start to breed with each other, the second generation of trees will have a mishmash of genes, some of which will be okay and some of which will die out. So composite provenancing seems to be the way to go here, and I want to go forward. There we go. Now, what we've been doing in Chiang Mai over the past 20 years is developing a system called the Framework Species Method of forest restoration. It's something that we imported from Australia. And we didn't set out to develop a system that was resilient to global warming. It's a kind of happy accident that many of the climate resilient features I've just been talking about are actually included in this framework species technique. The framework species method of forest restoration involves planting between 20 to 30 indigenous, no exotic species, indigenous forest tree species, which are specially selected for their ability to enhance or accelerate natural forest regeneration, and which also have the capacity to accelerate biodiversity recovery. The system we work on is 3,125 trees per hectare, which puts the trees 1.8 metres apart, so that as they grow up and the canopy will close early, that will shade out the weeds and recapture the site, turn the site from a weedy site into a tree-covered site as quickly as possible. So what are these framework tree species? The first thing you're looking for is high survival rate when you plant them out onto deforested sites. It's no good planting trees that die, so we do a lot of testing to figure out the survival rates of different species. After survival, you want growth. So you want to get the crown of the tree above the level of the weeds as quickly as possible, and you want the crown of the tree to kill the weeds. The best herbicide in the world is shade. You can't buy it in a bottle down the chemical store, but you can create it by planting trees which have particularly dense spreading canopies, crowns, and within 2 years to 3 years, the crowns are already shading out the weed. And in fact, if you look underneath this is the macaranja, you look underneath there, there's almost no weed growth there. And the leaves of the macaranja, you see these are dead leaves, are beginning to build up a nice mulch of organic matter down there. The final characteristic that we're looking for is the ability to attract seed dispersing animals, and we are particularly interested in the bulbuls, I've already mentioned that, and the fruit bats, I've already mentioned that one too. Animals that have the capability to come in and drop a whole load of seeds of species which we haven't planted. Now, remember, we're only planting up to 30 tree species. There are 325 tree species in evergreen forest. So somehow we need to plant the other 90%, and if we're going to employ these guys to do it for us, they're going to do 90% of the work. And the best thing is, you don't have to pay them a monthly salary to do it. They do it for free. So we capitalise on natural processes. We plant, with our framework tree species, we are mixing together the pioneer and the climax species together in a single step. Now in this diagram, the pioneer trees are in blue, so they're shooting up first, and the climax trees are shade-tolerant trees of mature forest. Pioneer trees are the light-loving, fast-growing trees that normally invade the deforested areas. The pioneer trees grow up, so we have already two layers in the canopy. We've got the upper layer and then we've got the lower layer. Pioneer trees grow up, in comes the wildlife, they drop the seeds, and now we have three layers. We have an upper layer that we planted, a middle layer that we planted, and a natural understory of seedlings coming up, and they've been planted by the wildlife. So it's all about exploiting, getting the wildlife to do most of the work. Now, FORU stands for the Forest Restoration Research Unit in the Biology Department of the Science Faculty of Chiang Mai University. We've been doing work to develop this technique for the past 20 years. We went out and we looked into the forest, we collected data on when trees were flowering and fruiting each year, and we figured out seed collection techniques that will maximize genetic diversity of the seed that you're bringing to the nursery. I mentioned Broadhurst's composite provenancing idea, and he suggested you go like 30, 40 kilometres south and collect a few seeds in a warmer area, and go 30 or 40 kilometres north and collect the seeds in a wetter area. We don't have to do that. We live on a mountain, so if we want to collect seeds